At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI garbage. What's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. I'm Daniel Pierce. Now, let's begin. The display flickered, bathing the cramped ready room in the stark, clinical light of a network broadcast. A being, a column of matte black material, unfurled limbs that branched like metallic ferns. Its voice, a resonant chord of processed tones, boomed from the speakers. The orator, the sanguine circuit's lead pundit, dissected the tearing wrecking crew's chances, pulling them apart piece by piece.
And now, we have the season's curiosity, the bipedal mammals from Earth. Humanity.
Their official team portrait appeared on screen, the four of them, severe and out of place in simple gray fatigues. Sergeant Brandt stood in the center, his posture rigid, a network of pale scars crisscrossing his face. Beside him, Corporal Barrows attempted a smile that tightened the muscles around his jaw. Specialist Karina, or Echo, offered the camera a flat, cynical stare, while Dr. Lynn stood slightly apart, her expression a deliberate blank.
Their frames possess an endoskeleton structure, with an internal chemistry prone to wild swings under stress. The circuit's predictive models have struggled to account for their chaotic approach in simulations.
A graphic materialized, a crimson pillar towered beside their picture, representing the combined betting pools against them. Next to it, a sliver of light show, thin as a wire.
The odds of Terran victory stand at, well...
The being paused.
Our systems calculate the probability of them surviving their first match at less than 1 in 30,000. A truly historic long-shot, viewers. The analyst suggests their simple joint structure, particularly in the lower limbs, will shatter under pressure.
A foil-wrapped nutrient block, a dense, unappetizing square of aminos and stimulants, flew across the room and smacked the display with a dull thud. The block left a greasy smear over the orator's smug, geometric face.
My knees are fine,
Barrows growled. He sat on a bench, the stripped-down chassis of a plasma repeater laid out across his massive thighs.
Worry about my knuckles.
Echo snorted from the corner where she sat cocooned in a nest of cables and flex screens.
You need thicker skin, Barrow. I'd have made the odds worse. They forgot we're all head cases.
She flicked a screen with her thumb, and the broadcast audio warped into a high-pitched squeal before cutting out. She smirked, satisfied. Much better. Dr. Lynn organized medical supplies on a fold-out table, her motions economical and sure. She arranged auto-injectors, synth-skin applicators, and packs of coagulants in neat, orderly rows. Every sterile package was a protest against the violence they were about to embrace. She paused, holding up a small, sealed vial. "Sergeant," she said, "are you certain about this? Once we walk out that door, we commit to this violence. Our path becomes clear." Brandt kept his focus on the smeared display. The faint reflection showed a man in his mid-40s with the compact, weathered build of a soldier who had spent more time in the field than out of it. Drained, he kept his gaze steady.
What are you eating, Sarge?
Barrows asked, his booming tone softening.
You've been quiet over there since the briefing.
Brandt turned and surveyed his team. Barrows, a powerhouse of muscle and overabundant optimism, a kid who thought he could solve any problem with enough applied force. Echo, a cynical genius who trusted machines over people, yet would follow Brandt into hell with a sarcastic comment and a fully charged wrist comp. And Lynn, the team's conscience, a woman with a palpable need to heal. His people, his responsibility. He let out a slow breath.
You remember that skirmish on Eridanus 6? The Syrian collective incursion?
Barrows nodded.
Hell yeah. They dropped a whole legion on us, outnumbered us 10 to 1. We held our ground for 3 days on stems and stubbornness. I was watching the conclave diplomatic feed. Some elder statesman, a Valish aristocrat, was discussing galactic security. He brought up Eridanus 6, called our victory a statistically anomalous display of panic aggression. He claimed it amounted to a fluke, a statistical error made by cornered animals.
He walked over to the nutrient block Barrows threw and picked it up. He folded the foil into a tight, sharp point.
They think we're a rounding error,
he continued in a low, dangerous rumble.
Fragile, emotional, unpredictable. They think our greatest strength, how we scrap the plan and improvise, is a flaw. They put us in their little box, run the numbers, and dismiss us.
He looked from Barrow's eager face to Echo's guarded one, and to Lynn's conflicted gaze.
They misjudge us. They misjudge our bodies, our minds, and what happens when you corner an animal from a planet that spent 1,000,000 years trying to kill it.
He jabbed the pointed foil into the bulkhead next to the door, leaving it stuck there like a tiny glittering spike.
That's why we're here. We fight for something more than glory or prize money. We're here to take their numbers, their predictions, and their condescension, and make them choke on them. We're here to win.
The orrery, a moon-sized station for televised slaughter, possessed an arena floor so vast it generated its own atmospheric haze. Banners of hard light pulsed in the artificial sky, displaying the sigils of legendary warrior clans and corporate sponsors. The Terran wrecking crew walked out to a smattering of pitying applause. They were a drab, gray interruption in a procession of vibrant, terrifying color. Before them marched the Goliaths, hulking figures in powered armor forged from asteroid iron. Behind them slithered the Shrike Conclave, their forms warping the air with personal cloaking fields as they bent at unnatural angles, clutching venom-tipped blades in their upper hands while using their lower set to stabilize the field emitters. Warriors with taunt patagia that crackled with stored energy soared overhead, drawing thunderous roars in the crowd. Brent kept his eyes forward, his spine straight. He could feel the weight of 1,000,000 alien gazes, most of them dismissive. Underestimation fueled him. He'd built a career on it.
Just another day at the office,
Barrows muttered, his knuckles white on his weapon stock.
An office with terrible lighting and a worse dress code,
Echo added. She scanned the stadium's architecture, searching for structural weaknesses. Then the announcer introduced the final champions, and the arena erupted. The sound hit him, a pressure wave that vibrated in Brant's bones.
And now, the Sanguine Circus reigning champions, the pride of Vesca, the Blade Artist, led by undefeated master, Byron Gag.
The Jescar champion strode onto the stage, and the parade faded into the background. Viren Kai stood over 2 meters tall. His steps were long and silent. He placed each foot with deliberation on the polished floor. His skin was a smooth, deep indigo, patterned with fine, silvery lines that hardened to a metallic sheen over his knuckles and joints. He held his arms loosely at his sides. Deactivated plasma blades lay sheathed in an X across his back. He continued his deliberate pace, owning the arena floor. As his procession passed the human team, he glanced over them. His was a brief, dismissive assessment, the kind an engineer might give a faulty component. His eyes, the color of cooling embers, were deep-set and analytical, settling on Brant for a fraction of a second longer than the others. The corners of his thin mouth tightened into a pitying smirk. Brad stood firm, his expression a neutral mask. He met the champion's gaze and held it, his own as fixed and unyielding as the deck plating. Vyvern looked away and continued his regal march toward the arena's center.
Charming fellow,
echoed deadpan. Barrows puffed out his chest.
Yeah, I can take 'em.
Brad just watched Vyvern's back. He had seen that look before, in the eyes of predators certain of their prey. The look they always wore, right before everything went wrong for them. Their first match took place in the Labyrinth of Shards, a maze of towering metallic structures with interlocking edges honed to monomolecular sharpness formed the arena. The entire construct resonated with a low, dissonant hum, and sharp, blade-like fragments littered the floor. The objective was simple: capture a beacon at the center. The judges, floating in shielded spheres above the maze, explained the scoring. They awarded points for speed, stealth, and, most importantly, elegance. A pristine environment was key to scoring high.
In other words, a playground built for them,
Echo summarized, tapping at a shimmering wireframe of the maze hovering above her wrist comp.
Our opponents are the patrons. Their forms are spindly and geologic, moving with the patient certainty of eroding stone. They exude a quick hardening silicate adhesive from their feet to scale these walls. They move in absolute silence, leaving the environment pristine. This is their perfect arena.
So, we make our own playground.
Brand's voice was calm in their comms. The starting klaxon blared. The 6 Petron warriors scribbled up the walls, their metallic forms a blur. They reached the halfway point before the humans took a dozen steps. By contrast, every human step crunched on the shard-strewn floor. A panel on Barros's armor scraped against a wall, and a high-pitched shriek echoed through the labyrinth. A red light flashed on the scoreboard overhead. Penalty, environmental disruption, Echo swore.
We're losing points just by breathing too hard.
Brand watched the Petrons disappear over a high wall. They followed the intended path, a complex route requiring agility and care, playing by the rules.
Echo, find me the shortest line from here to the beacon,
Brad ordered. A red vector sliced through 3 massive walls on his helmet's internal display.
There. But the walls are solid.
Right, Brand said. He looked at Barrows, who was hefting his heavy plasma repeater, a weapon more suited to punching holes in tank armor than delicate maneuvering.
Barrows, make us our own doors.
Barrows's grin flashed white in the gloom.
Now we're talking sense, Sarge.
He braced himself, aimed the repeater at the humming wall in front of them, and fired. The weapon, designed for armor penetration, discharged a concussive blast of raw energy. The sound was a pressure wave that flattened the air from their lungs. The metallic wall screamed, buckled, and then shattered inward, sending a shower of razor-sharp shrapnel in all directions. Another penalty light flashed on the board, this one accompanied by a blaring alarm.
Major penalty, wanton destruction.
The commentators on the broadcast, audible through the arena speakers, gasped in theatrical horror.
Forward.
Brant grunted, leading them through the jagged, smoking hole. The Petrons, perched high above, paused in their silent descent. Their cluster of optic sensors swiveled in unison toward the deafening blast below. The humans repeated the process twice more. Barros's cannon turned intricate architecture into slag. The noise was a physical shockwave. The destruction left gaping, molten wounds in the labyrinth's walls. While the Petrons navigated the elegant, winding maze as its creators intended, the Terran wrecking crew carved a straight, ugly trench directly toward their objective. They burst into the central chamber just as the first Petron warrior rappelled down from the ceiling. The alien froze, its silent ascent shattered by the 4 bloody, dust-covered bipeds who had just punched their way through solid metal. Brand lunged forward, grabbed the beacon, and slammed his hand on its activation plate. A victory siren wailed, a sound almost as ugly as their tactics. Metallic dust covered them, tore their fatigues, and they bled from a dozen minor cuts from the flying debris. But they held the beacon. The final scores appeared on the display. They had won the objective, but the judges awarded them the lowest possible score for style and the highest possible number of penalties. The commentators were speechless. In its floating command center high above, Sable, the circuit's master AI, flagged the event. This outcome broke every predictive model it possessed. The small victory celebration in their quarters consisted of Barrows chugging a rehydration solution and flexing in the mirror, admiring the new collection of cuts on his arms. Echo looped the broadcast replay, laughing at the commentator's horrified expressions.
Look at this one, she said, pointing at the orator's frozen, aghast face. You'd think we just stomped on its pet Grovac. Priceless.
Dr. Lynn abstained from the celebration. She worked in silence, sterilizing a deep gash on Brett's forearm with her lips pressed into a thin line. Her gentle touch belied the cold air around her. A chime sounded, and an official notification scrolled across their room's main terminal. Brett read it over Lynn's shoulder.
Recipient, Terran Wrecking Crew. Infraction Code 863, Wanton Environment Destruction. Code 915, Disregard for Combat Aesthetics. Code 1128, Excessive Decibel Violation. The Sanguine Circuit hereby levies a fine of 500,000 credits against your team, payable from any future winnings. A repeat of such unsportsmanlike conduct will result in immediate disqualification. The Sanguine Circuit is a showcase of martial artistry. Mindless vandalism has its place elsewhere.
500,000? That's more than the prize money for the first 3 rounds.
This is more than a punishment, Brent said, watching Lynn apply a synth skin patch to his arm. They're trying to price us out of the competition. Lynn finished her work and looked at him, her expression serious.
Can you blame them?
She asked.
We won, Lynn, he said.
Barrows sent a 50-kilo shot of metal tumbling toward a Petran warrior's head, she countered, her voice sharp and exact. I ran the trajectory. A few centimeters to the left, and it would have breached its cranial casing. You call that a win? That was a near-fatal miscalculation.
A calculated risk, one I took.
You ordered it, she corrected. You're teaching him this is acceptable, that winning is the only thing that matters. We came here to prove we were better than their caricature of us as panicked animals. What did we show them today? That an animal in a cage will tear it apart? That's the only message they received.
Brad fell silent. He looked past her to where Barrows now argued with Echo about the finer points of structural demolition. The kid flushed with excitement. Lynn was right. He was learning the wrong lessons.
I got us through the round, Lynn, he said, his voice hard. We're all in one piece, mostly. That's the mission. Survival.
Lynn gathered her medical supplies, her back to him, her shoulders set.
My mission is to keep this team alive, body and soul, she said, her voice firm. I swore an oath. First, do no harm. If your orders ever force me to choose between that oath and this competition, I will choose the oath. Every single time. Make sure you understand that, Sergeant.
She walked away, leaving him alone with his throbbing arm. The next arena, the gravity chasms, was a disorienting void of jagged asteroids floating in a zero-gravity expanse separated by dizzying dark gulfs. The arena's gravity generators were offline, a deliberate choice to favor their opponents, the Arids, void gliders whose vast solar cells of taut membrane flanked their long skeletal bodies, which they angled to catch stellar radiation to maneuver. They swooped between the rocks, capturing the beacons scattered across the asteroid field. The humans moved clumsily in their environment. Their gecko boots were sluggish, their movements ponderous. Every push-off from a surface sent them into an uncontrolled spin. The Arids ran circles around them, snatching beacons with mocking chirps.
This is a damn joke,
Barrows grunted, his attempt to leap from one asteroid to another resulting in a slow, undignified tumble. Echo, however, thought in physics, vectors, and trajectories, and how to exploit systems. While her body flailed, she ran calculations.
Sarge, I have a desperate idea,
she transmitted over their private channel.
I'm open to desperate ideas right now,
Brett replied, his voice strained. He was clinging to an outcropping upside down.
They're too fast, so let's change the physics,
Echo said as she tapped a sequence into her wrist comp. She fired a high-tension grapple line, the hook biting deep into a distant asteroid. "Barros, get over here and be an anchor. A big, solid, beautiful anchor." Barros, delighted to have a simple physical task, propelled himself toward her. He found a solid handhold and braced his massive frame.
Now what?
He asked. "Now we become a pendulum," Echo said. She looped her own line around Barros's armored waist. "Sarge, Lynn, tether yourselves to us. We're going to swing." The tactic was ugly and chaotic, but it worked. With Barros as the immovable pivot point, the other three became a human flail. Echo called out trajectories, and they swung in wide, brutal arcs, using their momentum to slam into the Arids instead of capturing beacons. An Arid would swoop in for a beacon, and 180 kilos of armored human, far more in Barros's case, would smash into it, sending it tumbling into the void.
Oh, this asteroid tetherable!
Barros roared with glee, the name sticking instantly. They captured only a handful of beacons themselves. They knocked the Arids around so much, disrupted their flight paths so thoroughly, that the winged aliens scored few points. The match ended with the humans holding a pitifully low score, just above the Arids' even lower one. The victory was so ugly that the commentators fell into a stunned silence. Bruised, dizzy, and nauseous, the humans moved on. Dr. Lin hated the moments between rounds more than the rounds themselves. Sable, the ever-watchful AI, used the lulls to introduce new variables. "Attention, combatants." The AI-synthesized voice echoed through the chasms. "The audience has voted to award a boon." In the center of several large asteroids, pools of shimmering liquid materialized. Their surfaces shifted with the oily, color-shifting sheen of a cephalopod's skin, glowing with a soft, inviting light. "Healing pools," Sable announced. "Submersion will accelerate cellular regeneration and soothe damaged tissues." The Arids, battered and bruised from the tetherball strategy, immediately began flocking toward the nearest pools. Their chirps sounded relieved. Barros moved toward one.
Oh, some good news for a change.
"Wait!" Lynn's voice sharp in the comms. "Everyone stay back. Keep away from that liquid." Her pulse hammered in her throat. The pool's color, that beautiful hypnotic shimmer, was aposematism, a warning signal encoded in the biology of every creature from Earth. The color of poison dart frogs, of blue-ringed octopuses. "Echo, give me a spectrographic reading on that fluid," she ordered, her voice tight. Columns of chemical markers and toxicity warnings filled her visor. She scanned the composition, her medical training intersecting with a deep, instinctual knowledge of hostile biospheres. The liquid was a cocktail of neurotoxins and corrosive biological acids, cleverly masked by a pheromonal attractant, a trap disguised as a gift. "It's poison," she said, her voice flat with horror. "They're trying to kill them." Brent processed her words instantly. His horror curdled into opportunity.
They think we're as naive as they are.
He grunted. He keyed his comms.
All right, team, new plan. We're all badly injured. Head for the pools. Move slow. Sell it.
Lynn's sharp, cold voice cut across the private channel. "Sergeant, this is murder."
They sent the trap, Lynn.
Brent shot back, his tone final.
We're letting them walk into it. We survive. They perish.
Move. He limped theatrically toward the nearest shimmering trap. The others followed suit, groaning and clutching at fictional wounds. The few remaining Arids who were hesitant saw the humans moving toward the boon. Eager to claim all the healing for themselves, they dove straight in. The effect was instantaneous. Their delicate solar cells dissolved. Their bodies convulsed as the neurotoxins flooded their systems. Within seconds, the entire enemy team convulsed, incapacitated, and writhing in agony in the beautiful, deadly pools. The humans stopped their act, watching in silence. Echo was staring at her rescom, her face pale. "Sarge, right before Sable announced the boon, the betting odds against the Arids skyrocketed. Someone knew this was coming. Someone bet on their annihilation." The game was a rigged, murderous spectacle, and somebody, somewhere, grew rich from it. The call came on Brant's private comm. its origin signature masked by layers of encryption. He accepted it. A hologram flickered to life in his quarters, resolving into the indigo-skinned form of Viren Kai. The champion stood out of his ceremonial armor unadorned.
Sergeant Brent.
Viren's deep voice was inquisitive, the formal poetic cadence replaced by a direct curiosity.
I have been studying the recordings of your matches.
Glad I could entertain you, Brent said, his tone dry.
This is beyond entertainment,
Viren replied, gesturing with a hand, the silvery lines on his knuckles catching the light.
It is a puzzle. Your fighting is all function bereft of beauty and honor. Yet you win. Tell me, why do you fight with such fury and abandon all that makes combat an art?
Brent leaned against a bulkhead. Where I come from, art is a luxury you appreciate after you've survived. We fight to survive. Viren tilted his head, a surprisingly human-like gesture.
I admit, your resilience is remarkable. I have seen the biometric data. The punishment your bodies absorb is incapacitating, yet you continue. But this path you walk, this reliance on brutality and chaos, it will draw the wrong kind of attention. The circuit has mechanisms, ways to correct for variables deemed unaesthetic.
You mean cheating, Brent said flatly.
I mean maintaining the art's integrity.
Viren corrected, though he hesitated.
Years ago, the Siron Legion fought here. They were much like you, strong, direct, brutally effective. The circuit retired them permanently. You are forcing the system to see you as a flaw for purging over a competitor for defeat.
Thanks for the advice, Brent said. But our purpose here is to win. Beauty is irrelevant. Viren held his gaze for a long moment.
I believe you,
he said, his tone shifted, edged with something that sounded like concern.
And that is what I find so deeply unsettling.
The hologram dissolved. Brent stared at the empty space where the champion had been. Viren was a true believer, another victim in a game far dirtier than he could possibly imagine, and he stood in their way. The next arena was a massive transparent sphere filled almost to the top with water. A few scattered pockets of air shimmered near the ceiling. Their opponents were the Abyssal Fleet, an amphibious species perfectly at home in the crushing pressure and dim light. The goal was to hold a small illuminated platform at the sphere's center for 5 consecutive minutes.
Well, this is suboptimal,
Burroughs commented as the water flooded in around them. They can outswim us, outfight us, and outbreathe us, Echo listed, treading water with an annoyed expression. Any other disadvantages we'd like to add to the pile? Brent took a long, slow breath, filling his lungs.
We can outlast them.
The Conclave's models labeled humans weak and fragile, overlooking the hidden architecture of their biology, mitochondrial efficiency that made their cells tiny power plants, the mammalian diving reflex, an ancient survival circuit that slowed the heart rate and shunted oxygenated blood to the brain and heart when submerged, and a deep, stubborn lung capacity born of ancestors who ran down prey for miles on open plains.
Rotation,
Grant ordered.
2 on the point, 2 on air duty. We fight to hold, conserve oxygen. Slow grappling movements. Burroughs, you and me first.
The Abyssal Fleet shot through the water, their powerful tails propelling them. They attacked with tridents that discharged bioelectric shocks. The fight was a slow, desperate wrestling match in the deep. Brent and Burroughs took the brunt of the assault, grappling, blocking, and absorbing blows. They fought to endure. Meanwhile, Echo and Lynn swam for the surface. They moved with agonizing slowness compared to the enemy. When they reached an air pocket, they breathed with purpose. They used a buddy breathing technique, a relic of old earth diving, sharing air from their own lungs to hyperoxygenate before making the long swim back down. Just as Brent felt his lungs seize with desperate fire, Echo and Lynn arrived. They tagged out and Brent and Barrows began their own ascent. The rotation continued, a brutal, exhausting cycling of fighting and breathing. The Abyssal fleet expended their energy in frantic, powerful attacks. Their assaults faltered against the apes' persistence. Their muscles spasmed, their chests burned, and black spots bloomed in their vision. But they held the point. When the 5-minute timer ran out, they alone remained on the platform. They surfaced, gasping, lungs on fire, bodies a mass of bruises and shock burns. They had won through sheer endurance. Sable's programming flagged anomalies for correction. Before their next match, Sable issued a flurry of new regulations galaxy-wide. Penalty for excessive environmental destruction. Penalty for non-strategic physical contact. Penalty for disregarding aesthetic combat parameters. The rules were vague, subjective, and all clearly aimed at stopping the Terran wrecking crew.
They stopped hiding it,
Barrows fumed, punching a bulkhead. The metal remained undented. While the others raged, Echo went to work. This was a direct challenge, and she took it personally. She dove into the station's network through a legacy maintenance port she found hidden behind a loose service panel in their quarters. The archaic access point, probably forgotten for centuries, was an open invitation for a hacker like her. She bypassed Sable's primary firewalls and slipped into the subsystems, the Orre's digital infrastructure. And there she found it, the truth, a hidden subledger encrypted by an outside source. It detailed decades of betting manipulation by a cartel of high-ranking conclave officials. They designed matches using Sable's own predictive models to create scenarios with guaranteed outcomes and astronomical profits. The poison healing pools were one of theirs. The humans were more than an anomaly to Sable. Their chaotic, unpredictable victories were crashing the cartel's balanced system. Sable's new rules were about wagering stability. The AI's core directive, buried under layers of PR about martial artistry, was to maximize wagering stability. It corrected for them because they were bad for business. Echo dug deeper. She tapped and swiped across her flex screen. She needed a weapon, and she found one, buried in the station's most archaic protocols, an emergency medical broadcast system, a relic from the circuit's earliest, most brutal days, a Priority 1 channel that could override every other broadcast on the network, a panic button designed to let a team's chief medical officer plead for outside intervention if a match went horribly wrong. Its trigger condition was hellish. A registered CMO could activate it with their real-time bioauthentication only when their patient's biometrics showed terminal decline. A digital dead man's switch. She presented her findings to the team. Barrows stopped punching the wall. Dr. Lynn, who listened in silence, looked at the data with a grim set to her jaw. Their frustration turned to a cold, hard fury. Their fight was about tearing down a corrupt, murderous institution from the inside.
So the whole thing is a lie,
Brent said, his voice dangerously quiet. Every lost credit, Echo confirmed. We're the ball in a rigged casino game. Brent glanced at the file Echo had labeled Desperation Key. He then looked at Dr. Lynn.
Our mission has changed, he said. Exposing the tournament is the new goal. Eclipsing victory.
For the semifinals, Sable transported them to a Savannah. Hot, dry air hung over ground covered in tall grass with long, vertical stripes that swayed in the artificial breeze. A hologram of a Valish aristocrat, a sleek, amphibious being, Prelate Grimaldi, whom Echo had identified as a key player in the betting cartel, appeared above the field. His jowls, quivered as he spoke.
We chose this unique environment,
Grimaldi oozed, his voice full of condescending pity,
to highlight the subtle strengths of different biologies. The flora you see is a variant of Jaskari razorgrass. Its blades carry a potent neurotoxin. A single touch to a permeable epidermis causes paralysis, followed by rapid systemic failure.
He gave the camera a slimy smile.
This match will surely prove once and for all that species with such vulnerable integuments, like our human contestants, better suit the sheltered ecosystems in which they evolved.
The opposing team, the Durrani Wardens, advanced. They were hulking, silicon-based lifeforms whose thick, geode-like hides vented superheated steam from fissures along their backs. They moved with slow, deliberate steps, keeping their articulated appendages well clear of the deadly grass. The humans stood there, calm, looking at the field.
That growth pattern, Brent murmured as he scanned the savannah. Tight clusters near the rocky outcrops, sparse in the lowlands. It's trying to conserve moisture.
He'd seen 1,000 variations of this on Earth, from the Amazon jungles to the plains of Africa. Dr. Lin studied the readings on her visor. The toxin's chemical signatures in a conite analog. Nasty stuff. But the delivery system is crude. It needs direct prolonged contact with exposed skin. Brent keyed his public comms, cutting through the prelate's self-satisfied broadcast.
Prelate Grimaldi.
The amphibious being faltered, surprised by the interruption.
You calculated our chances of victory at 0.003%.
Brent's voice was cold and clear, echoing across the arena and through the broadcast feeds of 1,000,000 worlds.
A statistical impossibility. You ran our biometrics, our tech specs, our simulated combat data. But you forgot one important fact.
He took a deliberate step forward, his standard-issue combat boot pressing down on a patch of striped grass. A faint wisp of smoke curled up where the boot's sole met the neurotoxin blades. But that was all. He whispered, his voice a gravelly tone with more power than a shout.
We are Death Worlders. You call this a death trap. We call it home.
The rest of the team followed him. They moved with an economy of motion born of survival, a thing born, not taught. They read the terrain, spotted the dangerous patches, and moved through a hostile environment that was a pale echo of the one that had forged their species. The Durrani, in their heavy hides, were hesitant and slow. The humans, in their thin fatigues, moved like predators stalking prey. They used the grass as cover, ambushing their opponents. Survival, weaponized. The call came as Echo predicted. Prelate Grimaldi, his holographic image flickering with haste and agitation, appeared in Brant's quarters. He used a channel he believed was secure and triple encrypted. Echo's digital net waited for him. She routed the entire feed through her system and recorded it.
Sergeant Brent,
Grimaldi began, dispensing with any pleasantries.
Your tenacity is commendable, but it is destabilizing the market. I mean the circuit.
Brent played along, affecting an exhausted soldier's expression.
It's a tough tournament.
Indeed. Which is why my patrons authorize me to make you an offer.
Grimaldi said, his voice dropping conspiratorially.
The final match will be against Viren Kai, a foregone conclusion, of course, but a spirited defeat can be more profitable than an unlikely victory. Throw the match, make it look good. In return, you and your crew will receive wealth beyond your species' comprehension. Status, a place at the table.
He leaned closer, his amphibious features filling the hologram.
You will take a fall, and you will find your pragmatism rewarded.
Brent saw Echo give him a silent thumbs up. She had it all, every incriminating word. Brent listened patiently until the prelate had finished laying out the entire plan, implicating himself and the rest of the cartel. Then a slow, tired smile spread across Brent's face. He laughed, a short and harsh sound.
Prelate,
he said, his voice full of mock sympathy.
You've spent so much time rigging the game. You've forgotten how to play.
You're in the wrong business. He cut the connection, leaving the sputtering, furious face of Prelate Grimaldi to fade out.
We got him,
Echo whispered.
We got them all.
The final duel was one-on-one, Brent versus Viren, flesh and bone only. The arena was a single massive platform of black rock, tilting and shifting unpredictably over a bottomless chasm. The gravity fluctuated, a final gift from Sable designed to favor Viren's superior balance and speed. The fight began as a beating. Viren moved in an indigo blur. His strikes were a fluid percussive rhythm, each blow exact, landing on nerve clusters and joints. He dismantled Brent piece by piece. Brent's counters met empty air. He endured. He used his lower center of gravity, a human advantage in the shifting gravity, to absorb the impacts. A hard-knuckled fist shattered two of his ribs. He grunted and stayed on his feet. A kick swept his legs out from under him. He tucked and rolled, coming up, blood streaming from his nose. He fought to buy time. A human shield. His only job was absorbing punishment until the trap was sprung. Viren, who clearly expected an easy, elegant victory, paused for a fraction of a second. The human was a mess of bruises and blood, gasping for air. He should have been unconscious 10 blows ago, yet he stood. Though pain clouded his vision, he kept his eyes fixed on Viren. A flicker of respect showed in the champion's expression for this ugly, stubborn creature that refused to fall. Viren's attacks changed. The aesthetic flourishes gave way to purely functional strikes aimed to disable. He abandoned the performance. He was a warrior, facing an opponent who met every artful strike with infuriating persistence. In the team's medical bay, the real fight happened.
Heart rate at 180.
Echo called out, her gaze fixed on the biometric feed from Brent's suit.
Blood pressure dropping. Multiple microfractures detected in the sternum and ribs.
Dr. Lin stood before a medical console, her hand hovering over a large red activation panel. Her face hardened with concentration. The monitor showed Viren systematically destroying Brent, her expression focused and detached. She was using her clinical knowledge to guide her leader to the edge of death.
He's pushing his body into shock, she murmured. Adrenal response is failing.
In the arena, Viren delivered a devastating spinning kick to Brent's chest. The impact, a wet, heavy crack, echoed through the stadium. Brent flew backward, landing in a heap near the platform's edge. He crumpled to the ground.
Vitals are crashing,
Echo yelled.
Massive internal bleeding. He's in cardiac arrest. Now, Lin, now!
Brent took a final, crushing hit to the head as he tried to rise. His vitals plummeted into the deep red. His body was failing. He reached the trigger parameters. Dr. Lin slammed her hand down on the console. Her palm print and live biometric signature authenticated the protocol. Emergency medical broadcast activated. For a fraction of a second, a Priority 1 data conduit, an unbreakable override channel, opened straight into the Sanguine Circuit's master broadcast feed. That was all the time Echo needed. She jammed the recording of Prelate Grimaldi's bribe through the opening. Across the galaxy, on every screen turned to the championship, the image of Viren Kai standing over Brent's broken body vanished. The secret, clandestine recording of Prelate Grimaldi replaced it.
Take a fall. Wealth beyond your species comprehension.
The prelate's incriminating words echoed as the arena fell silent. Echo followed it with the neatly packaged data stream she pulled from the subsystem's decades of fixed matches, manipulated betting odds, and the true profit-driven directives of the AI Sable. The crowd's cheers faltered, replaced by a rising murmur of confusion that erupted into outrage. Echo did more than expose the scheme. She'd burned the whole damn operation to the ground. In the arena's center, Byron Kai froze mid-strike, his final finishing blow halted inches from Brad's skull. He stared at the giant displays, his expression slack with disbelief as the proof that his entire life, his honor, his art, rested on a foundation of lies played out before him. The AI Sable went silent, its core programming caught in a recursive error loop. Its directive to maintain wagering stability was in direct conflict with the public exposure of that stability's fraudulent nature. Painfully, Brand pushed himself up onto one knee. A wreck, bruised and bleeding, he was alive. He looked up at Byron. He met Byron's eyes, both reeling from the same betrayal. The Jeshkar champion looked from the damning evidence on the screen to the battered human before him. He retracted his arms. He stood to his full height, then gave Brent a short, formal bow, lowering his head, a Jeshkar gesture of concession for a revered opponent. He conceded to the truth, transcending the fight. The sanguine circuit collapsed. The broadcast had shattered the Conclave's authority in a single, irreversible blow. Authorities launched investigations. They issued warrants. The cartel's empire crumbled in a matter of hours. The Terran wrecking crew's victory was the truth itself. In the chaotic aftermath, as security forces stormed the executive boxes, a delegation of warriors from a dozen different species approached them as allies. Byron Kai led them. He stopped before Brent, who leaned on Dr. Lin, a proud-looking Barrows at his side.
Your fight was functional,
Byron said, his voice quiet but clear amid the din.
Had to be.
Brad rasped through a split lip.
And in that,
Byron continued, extending the hand, its sharp talons retracted,
you have shown us all what true honor is. True honor lies in the fight's truth, beyond the strike's beauty.
Brent looked at the offered hand. He took it. The handshake between the battered human and the disgraced champion became the first step toward building something new, something honest, from the old game's glittering, corrupt ruins.